Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Playful Wise Woman Show. I'm Cait Finn, joy and strategy mentor for business owners and leaders who are stuck in the burnout cycle or on the verge of burnout. I want to talk to you today about something that I talked a little bit about in episode 5. So if you missed that, definitely go back and catch that. It was a lot about why it's so important that we prioritize stepping away from the business, intentional creative time in our business, all of those pieces. And today on the show, I want to really get into how I use and teach some of my clients to use something called theme days. Another way we could look at this is creating your CEO schedule for the week, right? A lot of times, my clients who have come from the corporate world, a lot of my clients have come from education. They are very tied to this idea that the 9 to 5 plus more hours, usually they're putting in, is what makes them productive or what will make their business successful. And we do a lot of work on unpacking and getting clear on what they want their week to look like, right? A lot of the work that I do is helping my clients let go of this is what it should look like, this is what I need it to look like, and really, really getting clear on what we want it to look like and what is serving us first and our family and our business. And ultimately, what allows us, when all of those things are taken care of and in alignment, what ultimately allows us to serve our clients and our people and put our magic and our wisdom out into the world. For those of you that have followed me for a while or know some of my story, know that a large part of my professional background was in the world of competitive weightlifting as an athlete and a coach. I still to this day travel around the country and coach other weightlifting coaches, help them coach all the sides of it. Very similar and a lot of parallels to the work that I do with my business owner clients, the entrepreneurs that I work with. And a good chunk of that part of my career was spent at the college level, working in college athletics as a college strength and conditioning coach, in leadership education, and then also in administration. But one of the things that I carried from that time as a college strength and conditioning coach specifically is the way that we map out annual training plans for our athletes and our teams. And we always work backwards and from big picture into the details. So we always start with the end goal, whether that's being in season, competition, whatever that looks like. So for a lot of my college athletes, that is nationals, or it is getting to postseason, whatever the goal is, right? We start there and we work backwards. And it's using this framework when we have a skeleton or a big picture of the annual training plan, of the benchmarks and the mile markers, that then allows me to get strategic in different times of the year of what the focus should be in their training, whether it's developing strength, developing muscle endurance, developing power, speed, whatever that is. I can be strategic about placing that in based on that big picture. Similarly, right, I do the same thing with my business coaching clients. I have them map out the big picture of the year. I have them get clear on some of the bigger pieces that are really important to them. Then we get an idea of what focuses strategically there are in different times of the year. What times of the year do we want to be busier with launching and selling? What times of the year do we want to be in a slower season, either by virtue of our industry, or maybe you want to be in a slower season in the winter to align with the seasons of the year. Maybe you want your business slower season to actually be in the summer when your kids are home from school and you want to be doing more with them, right? You get to decide that, but we collect that information and then we start to get into the nitty gritty of the week itself. And just like in that strength and conditioning world, I would look at the big picture and then build out, we call it macro, meso, micro. So I would start to look at the week and I would collect additional variables. When do they have practice? When are the heavy class days? If they're in season, when are the competitions typically? Do they have weekday competitions or is it just on the weekend? And then I would plan out their themes of each day in a given week. We do the same thing with my business coaching clients. You don't have to have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 in your business. You can if you want, but you don't have to. And that's a really empowering and freeing experience for my clients to go through when we really start to unlock that and uncover that. It's also a little scary because sometimes having that Monday through Friday 9 to 5 gives people structure and safety and security in knowing what is coming. And so instead of saying, well, it has to be Monday through Friday 9 to 5, we now take that same concept and we shake it on its head and we decide, well, what do you want it to look like? Let's figure out other ways to get you safety and security and consistency in your business. And so I ask my clients to identify key variables that they know they are set no matter what, at least for the most part, right? 90% of the time. Are you a parent running a business? Okay. What's your kids' schedule? Are they school age? Are they in school already Monday through Friday? Are they in school only certain days of the week? We're going to jot that down and know that we're going to try and leverage and take advantage of that time. Do you have someone coming in to support you with childcare? What days of the week are those? Right? That's one example of some of the variables that are kind of set in stone that I want my clients to collect. Some other examples might be, when do you want to prioritize family time? You know, for me right now in this season of life and my partner's schedule and my stepdaughter's schedule, weekends are very, very sacred family time for us. I don't work on my business at all on the weekends unless I want to, unless I feel a spark of excitement, unless there's a schedule shift later in the week, so maybe I have to adjust a little bit, but I keep that time very protected. There have been seasons of my business and life where that's not always the case. Before my daughter was in school, there were seasons where I had to work Sunday afternoons so that we could juggle childcare. My partner has a traditional 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So he would be lead parent on some Sunday afternoons and I would be working. Not the ideal for us, but it was what we needed to do in that moment when we didn't have as much support around childcare. Right? So just starting to collect some of those variables that are set in stone. Then I also want you to identify your desires around this. Do you love working 5 days a week? Would you rather work 6 days a week, shorter hours? Do you really want to be at the point where you only have to work 3 or 4 days a week? Because I do. That's my dream. That's what I've worked towards. But I'm very strategic around it, right? My set business work days are Monday through Thursday, and I work a little bit Friday mornings, right? That's in this current season of life. But I knew that that was a goal, so I worked to get there. My friends, I am here to tell you more isn't always more in business. Being in that hustle and that grind doesn't make you a better business owner. Let me say it a little louder for the people in the back. Working 60 to 80 plus hours a week, grinding away in your business, doesn't make you a better business owner than the people that are working less hours. Now, on the flip side of that, we do need to put some strategic work into our business, but we get to decide what that looks like and we get to have a goal to work towards. If I want to be working less hours in my business, the reality is that my business needs to get to a point where it can support some team members, where I can be paying other people on my team to be taking some of the time consuming tasks off my plate. That's the reality. If my business isn't there, then it might need to be me putting in some more of those hours. Okay, so first step was identifying the variables that are a little bit more set in stone, a little bit more consistent and known. Then identify what your desires are, and we start to map it out. We always have to be ready for a couple things that might throw us off, adjusting for the outliers. A great example of that is kids being sick. If your kids are in school age and in school, knowing when their weeks are off, right? So I will adjust and block out those weeks, knowing that I can't give, not just time wise, but capacity wise, to the normal level I would when my daughter's in school. It's not fair to my clients. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to her. No one's getting the best of me at that point. So I block that week off a little bit more and build in some more strategic rest time, right? The other thing that I want you to be aware of that's really sneaky, and I get caught in this still too, is I don't want you to get locked in once you settle into a good way of this is the only way it can be. This is the way it is. Because there are seasons of our business and our life that will be different. I just made this big transition in this season of life and business. We made the tough at the time decision, but the best decision now looking back at it for us in this season of life, to put our daughter, who's 3.5, back in school. She goes to a little private Waldorf school 3.5 days a week, and then Friday morning she is at a fantastic little nature school by us out in the woods. And then our neighbor friend who homeschools watches her for a couple hours as a mother's helper right after nature school. It's fantastic. And before we made that decision, I was really frazzled and struggling with how I would juggle it all. But I was caught up in this idea of, well, this is what I've been doing this last year and this is what's been working. And I couldn't step back for a while and look at all the creative ways that we could flex this and shift this. And then when I was able to do that with some support from my coach at the time, I realized that I was getting hooked on this idea that this is how I've been doing it for the last year. So that would just be how I would continue to do it. But the reality is our kids grow, our desires change, we change. So what might work in this particular season of life may not work in a couple months or in a year. The other thing to recognize, and I'm walking a client through this right now, is we also see shifts, and I kind of alluded to this, in ebbs and flows at different times of the year. So for her, we recognize that there was a big pattern of going from two different extremes, from like boredom and feeling like she wasn't doing enough in her summer months, even though she was intentionally taking time to slow down and be with her kids, to total overwhelm and exhaustion come October because she was spreading herself a little bit too thin with travel back to back to back. And so we just had to remind her and look back at last year, that same time, that was a little bit of the trend and perfect storm of choices she made, as well as the ebb and flow in her industry. A little bit of like a fire hose in the fall of busyness. And so when we recognize those patterns, we can adjust for them and be a little bit more proactive for them the following year. So those are a couple of reminders that always be willing to adjust for outliers. Don't get locked in on only doing it one way. We get to change and shift and evolve and pivot. So after we have looked at things from like that big picture, looked at the year, looked at what we want our focus to be in this particular time, we have identified our variables that are kind of set in stone or a little bit more structured, we've identified our desires, then we start to map it out. And I'm going to walk you through what my current CEO schedule looks like And it's similar and different than what it looked like a year ago. I've told you that my weekends are very sacred and protected right now. I also know that there are some weekends that I will travel to teach. So on those weeks, that's one of my outliers. I will adjust the following week to support that. And I know and have learned about myself that I really like kind of slowly easing into the week on a Monday, and I like to be mostly wrapped up by Thursday. I like to have Friday to be this free, fun day where I can do what I need to do. Sometimes that's work, sometimes it's always checking in with my clients and supporting them in my hours. But maybe I'm doing that while I'm out and about running errands or I'm puttering on the property, whatever that looks like. So, knowing that, I make the decision not to take any client calls on Mondays and Fridays. I don't take any calls at all on Fridays. Mondays, I don't take client calls, but I will do my team calls then because it is my day to record podcast episodes, my day to get prepped for the week, my day to map out content, my day to check in with my team and support them. It's kind of like my CEO day. I can also float in other things that I might need. Maybe I've got an appointment that day, whatever that looks like. So that means that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are a little bit more of my jam-packed day, where I might have some back-to-back client calls with some strategic breaks built in, all of that. My own coaching calls where I get coached happen in those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, one of my structured variables is that Riley is only in school Thursday mornings. It's like her half day. We didn't want to put her into school full time yet. We didn't. It just was a choice that we made as a family, and my schedule supports that. So I also have less hours available for calls on Thursdays. So I really prioritize calls on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we'll use Thursdays an overflow day, and or just an admin day for myself, depending on the week. Now, another structure and variable I look at is Riley and her dad are out the door usually by 7:30. He takes her to school. And so I have the morning for me, whatever I need to do. I check in with myself with a sacred pause. Right now, I'm starting to zero in. I'm telling you what my theme days are like. And now I'm starting to zero in on the schedule. I still keep blocked out from that 7:30 till 9 or 10, depending on the day, no calls. I start my work day at my laptop no earlier than 9 a.m. So that 7:30 to 9 a.m. is my lifting time, my walking time, journaling, coffee, breakfast, prepping myself for the day ahead so that I can show up to my fullest and my best. And then I have client calls between 9 or 10 and 2 when I then downshift and transition and leave the house by 2:30 to go pick up Riley. And then the rest of the day is family time. That's what our current season of life looks like. That's what our current schedule is. That's how my theme days work. So my theme days are Monday is a CEO day, behind the scenes, working on the business, supporting my team, checking in with my team, all of those things. Tuesdays and Wednesdays in my work block are client calls. It's a whole different kind of energy. I'm usually really tapped out by the end of the day, so I'm also really aware of what Tuesdays and Wednesday nights look like. Low key, family time, dinner, nourishment, all of that. Thursdays will be a mix of calls / admin in the morning, and then a Riley Mama day where we putter and adventure and do all the things. And then Fridays is kind of my free open day to wrap up any projects, start prepping for the following week, work on the homestead. It's a great buffer travel day for me if I'm traveling for a weekend. And then if I am teaching on a weekend, I always take that following Monday off. So I'll shift things around and juggle that way. So that's a little bit of an overview. I'm also going to run you through a really quick example of how one of my clients is currently starting to juggle and navigate that. She wears a lot of hats also. Full-time mom at home, homeschool, two arms of her business, homemaker, caretaker, all of the things. She's wearing a lot of hats, and we are working on her coming out of some major, major burnout. Big career shift, leaving her career, starting the businesses, um, some old patterns and burnout, and all of those things. So we're recognizing that. And one of the things that she's starting to do now is playing with some themed days and times to give herself, because a lot of the lines were getting blurred of work time and family time and kid time and homeschooling, and she was really beating herself up for what she felt like was not a good job in any of the areas. So we started giving her some boundaries around the areas to support that. So now Mondays she is out of the house most of Monday and working on one arm of the business, and then Tuesdays and Thursday evenings she's dedicated a couple hours each of those nights to work on the other arms of the business. And that's working for her right now. That allows her to show up and homeschool her kids in a way that she wants to, right? So it gets to look different for everyone. We get really clear on what our why is for having our business. We get really clear on that big picture view. We then map out different times of the year what we think the energy will look like and what we want to be focusing on our business. We then look at a week and we assess what the set in stone, I'll use that phrase even though nothing's really set in stone, the set in stone variables are. We identify what our desires are and what we would like this to look like, and we map out a framework so that we have some structure and stability and accountability for ourselves without creating so much constriction, because I do see that happen. I see people go the other way and they want to schedule every hour of their day, and then as soon as that doesn't play out the way they anticipated, they feel like they failed. So we give structure and framework without backing you into a corner, and then we let you adjust and play with it and try a different way of doing it as your seasons of life and business evolve and change. I would love to hear what you think about this process. If this is something that you've played with before, or if you start playing with it and trying it out after this episode, please let me know. And you can always drop into my messages over on Instagram at the Playful Wise Woman. I would love to connect with you there. This episode is being released in November, and I am offering 12 free strategy calls for business owners in November. 2 of them have already been claimed. So if this is something that you want to work on and get support on, I would love to help you with that in that strategy call. We can really map out what that looks like. Hop on over to Instagram and drop me a message, and we'll get you scheduled for one of those if they're still available.